And I'm back from outer space. And you just walked in to find this sad look upon my face. Don't worry, I'll survive. I'm actually not that sad. Just doing some thinking about writing and making silly little videos with the duck about said writing. So what's going on with this series? Well, to answer that, let's start with my original vision for this writing vlog. When I started, I wanted to see if I could make one of these videos about one per month, without it severely impacting my writing rate. That's a nice idea at least, but hasn't been working. Well, I recently got a new tattoo done, and I was catching up with my artist. It was about 2 years since my last one, and they said, "Hey, weren't you working on a book last time you were here? How's that going?" I got tons of story notes and character designs and bios and maps and literal millennia of esoteric lore and actual story, you say? Well, yeah, no, it's going. Not a super great feeling to have that 2-year benchmark and not much actually done in terms of a final book. So, with the goal of actually finishing a book, these videos have always been an if I have the time kind of project, and I'm not sure I have the time to do it once a month. One of the main issues with it is these videos have slowly been getting more elaborate, which in turn take longer to make. Roughly every 3 minutes is an extra night of work for me, and with my day job, I only have so many nights to make videos, write, handle my personal life, and maybe some nights relax. I like goofing around and adding new bits, like a whole new character palette for going to a fictional Pandora, but, these things take time. And any video over 10 minutes long kind of blows up my monthly schedule. So I could do option A, trim the script down and keep it to a tighter 10 minutes. Option B, make a video in 2 months or more instead of trying to force it into one. I'm leaning option B. So we'll get these out at a rate of as frequently as DD possible. And one more reason why things are taking a little longer to get videos done. I've actually been writing. Hold on to your beaks, the guy who's doing a writing channel is actually doing the writing part. Back in June, I took a train trip across the country. One of the goals was that I was going to be stuck on a train and forced to write. Not a bad plan, but I had a lot of world building I felt like I had to finish before I could get started. So I took a little over 2 months, and that was all I did. Like, a lot. Oh, and don't worry, we'll go over it. Oh, will we ever? So, I had to put videos on the back burner for a while. Why do we use that phrase, the back burner? Is something wrong with the back burner? Like, can it not burn as well as the front burner can burn? I'm sure there's a chef's reason for it, but Going forward, these videos won't really be a live recap of what I've been doing since the last video. I'll have some of that, updates on writing and such, but then we'll play catch up on all the world building pieces I've done in the meantime. So let's see how that goes. And it goes to finally talking about rivers and lakes. I've only been promising it the past 3 videos. Anyway, first things first. What are my general rules about placing rivers? Well, first, these will all be realistic rivers. No rivers flowing up hills, no magic waterways, nope, real logic. There is that one river in Canada though, what's it called? The Reversing Falls. Yeah, that it flows in different directions depending on the tide. So I could make a river like that and it would still be correct. Nope, not worrying about that right now. Things like that could be fun later if it's story relevant. But for now, let's just keep it simple. Rivers always flow to the lowest elevation, sea level. The sea. Rivers go to the sea. By extension, rivers will generally start up in mountains or hills, usually via rains or snowmelt. Mountains should act as divides. A river should only flow in one direction from a mountain, not through it or over it. Let's look at a map of the US for a quick example. There are 2 major divides in the US, the Continental Divide and the Eastern Continental Divide. Water that flows west of the Continental Divide all ends up in the Pacific Ocean. East of the Eastern Continental heads to the Atlantic, and everything in between just dumps out into the Gulf of Mexico, and, eventually to the Atlantic, I guess. River deltas will always be at the end of a river, never at the beginning. In the real world, they're always at the end. It might look kind of cool on a fantasy map, but that's not really how it works. But rivers can and should flow together which can kind of create that delta look on a map. And now, we need some water. Andrew, turn on the faucet! Very nice. And like water off a duck's back, we have some rivers forming on Pond World. Let's take a look! The first river I put in was this big one here in the middle of Alpha. Inspired by the mighty Nile River of Egypt, this is probably the most important river on Alpha. It's important for agriculture, and it will act as a major transportation artery for 2/3 of the continent. One thing to point out though, the Nile was so important to Egypt because the floods were regular and predictable. If we go to the northern part of this river, we can see that it's being fed by lots of mountain runoff rivers. This makes this area likely prone to unpredictable floods. But if we head south, there's more flat plains and less feeder rivers, so this main river should be calmer down here. These flooding factors are something to keep in mind for future disasters and myth crafting that'll happen in this region for our various cultures. The other major river on Alpha is on the other side of the mountain. This river is my Amazon equivalent. And knowing that I want it to be a major jungle river, I've placed it very close to the equator. We'll see more about this when I get into the video on climates. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. This river is also the only one I took the time to map out a river delta at the end. Look, other rivers are going to have deltas, but I really wanted this one to be important. Also, after doing this one, I realized it's a little tedious to add deltas that are to scale everywhere. So I'm going to kind of fudge it for all the other rivers right now. Let's slide on over to Gamma quick and just point out some other major river systems here, here, and there. These rivers don't have any real-world counterparts, but they are likely to be crucial to civilizations forming. Also, I like these two being in mountain valleys because I think that's a neat setting and really no other reason. One last river point. The rivers on this map are just the major rivers. You know, your Niles, Amazons, Yellows, Mississippi, Danubes, etc. There are lots of smaller rivers across this world, but I'm not about to take the time to map all of them. Now, if they're plot relevant, they get to show up later in a new map revision. And now, for some lakes. Ducks just love a good lake. My logic for lakes is much less scientific than my river logic. Honestly, I just kind of put them in places that I thought would make the world a little more interesting in those areas. Like this one up here on the Alpha Nile River. Some small rivers fill this lake, and then the water goes on its way to the rest of the big river. This makes the riverhead a little more interesting for the world's inhabitants. Traveling downriver, we have this inland lake, kind of treating it like a smaller Caspian Sea. Because it's inland, it's probably left over from a bigger part of the very nearby ocean, which means it's salty. But, you know, only kind of salty, not Dead Sea salty. Why? Because I don't want it to be. Mind your own business. Let's bounce back north, and you'll see some lakes up here. Originally, I just wanted to add like a northern lake country area, but there is an active volcano right here too. So I'm going to say these lakes have some fun geology going on with them, and they're going to be home to geysers, hot springs, and other fun stuff like that. Let's fly to the other side of the world again. Boy, are my arms tired. No, not because of that tired old bad joke. From holding this stick up. I really need to hit the gym more. If you're a fan of salt, and who wouldn't be, and were disappointed by the last inland lake, well, look no further than right here. This bad boy is going to be very similar to the Great Salt Lake in Utah. Like the Great Salt Lake, mountain runoff will feed it, but it has nowhere to go. So, the water will evaporate, leaving behind all that salty brine and some delicious mineral deposits. Lastly, we have the Isthmus Lake. We talked about this one back in episode 3. Back then, I said I didn't have a solid plan for how water flowed in and out of this one. And I still don't. There you have it. Rivers and lakes? Done. Hold up though. We said where they are, but not where they're getting their water from. Good thing the next episode will answer those questions when we dive into changing your climate.
Quack.